much.
Here is the English version of
I
Chapter
stand
1,
before you
keeping the
tonight not
protagonist
just as a
female as in the
CEO,
original script.
but as
The
someone who
television
knows
remote
what it
slipped
means
from the
to
man's
struggle.
hand and crashed onto the floor. On the national broadcast, the host had just spoken a name that made his blood run cold. Charlotte Bennett. The daughter he had abandoned in a snowstorm 13 years ago. But that part of the story comes later. Because everything began during a bitter winter in Duluth, Minnesota, where a 15-year-old girl slowly learned that not every family knows how to love fairly. My name is Charlotte Bennett. If I had to describe my childhood with a single word, it would be invisible. I was always there. But nobody truly saw me. In the Bennett household, my younger sister Ava was the center of everything. Ava's laughter made my parents smile. Ava's tears made the entire house stop. And me? I was little more than a shadow moving quietly through their lives. Ava was 3 years younger than I was. Even as a child, she understood something powerful. If she looked hurt, people rushed to protect her. Dad called her his little princess. Mom constantly reminded everyone how sensitive and fragile she was. Nobody seemed to notice that her fragility often felt like a carefully crafted mask. When I was 14, I won first place in the city's youth science competition with a technology project designed to help students with disabilities access educational materials more easily. I still remember that afternoon. The sky was bright and clear. The silver trophy sparkled in the sunlight. On my way home, I imagined my parents smiling proudly. Maybe this time they would finally see me. Maybe this time things would be different. But the moment I walked through the front door, Ava was crying. She had failed to earn a spot in a school dance performance. Mom immediately wrapped her arms around her. Dad sat beside her and began comforting her. Every ounce of attention shifted toward Ava. The trophy in my hand suddenly felt meaningless. Nobody asked how I won. Nobody wanted to hear my story. 3 days later, the trophy was moved to the basement. Just like every achievement that came before it. That was the day I stopped waiting for recognition. Instead of searching for love inside my family, I started building a future of my own. Every night, after everyone else had gone to sleep, the glow of my computer screen illuminated my room. I taught myself programming. I studied artificial intelligence. I consumed every technical article, research paper, and online course I could find. While everyone saw me as a quiet, withdrawn teenager, I was secretly developing an online learning platform designed to help underprivileged students succeed in school. No one knew about it. Not even my parents. It was the biggest secret of my life. And one day, it would change everything. Late in January, an email appeared in my inbox. I had been selected as a finalist in the state youth technology competition. Thousands of students had applied. Only a small number had advanced. I stared at the screen for several seconds. My heart pounded so hard it almost hurt. For the first time in years, I wanted to share my happiness with my family. That evening, I handed the acceptance letter to my father. He read it for less than a minute. "That's nice." Then he placed it back on the table. That was all. At that exact moment, Ava walked into the living room. She glanced at the letter. Then at me. Then at our parents. A chill ran down my spine. The expression in her eyes didn't belong to a 12-year-old girl. It looked calculated. Cold. Deliberate. Throughout dinner, Ava barely spoke. She simply watched. Mom asked several times if something was wrong. Ava shook her head each time. Dad assumed she was tired. Mom thought she was stressed about school. But I knew better. I knew my sister far too well. Ava's silence was never a sign of peace. Later that night, snow began falling outside my bedroom window. White flakes swirled through the darkness, twisting violently in the icy wind. I sat at my desk and stared outside. A strange feeling settled deep inside my chest. A feeling I couldn't explain. It felt as if something was approaching. A storm. Not only outside, but inside my life. I had no idea that within a matter of days, a carefully planned lie would destroy everything I had worked so hard to build. And I certainly had no idea that the girl everyone underestimated would one day hold the power to transform thousands of lives. But before the light arrives, darkness always comes first. For the next few days, Ava remained unusually quiet. To everyone else, it looked harmless. To me, it felt like the calm before a hurricane. I tried to focus on school, on coding, on the state youth technology competition that was only weeks away. Every spare moment went into improving my learning platform. The project had grown far beyond anything I had imagined. Several teachers from neighboring districts had already contacted me about testing it with struggling students. For the first time in my life, I felt as though I was building something that mattered. Something that belonged to me. Then Chloe Harper walked into the story. Chloe was one of the smartest girls in my chemistry class. She was kind, confident, and impossible not to like. We worked together on a science project, and over time we became friends. That was all. At least, that was all it was to me. But Ava saw something different. One afternoon, Chloe stopped by my locker after class. "Charlotte, your presentation was amazing today," she said. I laughed. "Thanks. Yours wasn't exactly terrible." She smiled. "Would you mind helping me prepare for the regional science fair?" Of course. We talked for only a few minutes before heading our separate ways. When I turned around, I noticed Ava standing at the end of the hallway. Watching. Her expression was completely blank. Cold. The same expression I had seen the night my acceptance letter arrived. A knot formed in my stomach. That evening, Ava barely touched her dinner. Mom kept asking if she felt sick. Dad offered to let her stay home from school the next day. Ava simply shook her head and whispered that she was fine. But I could see something burning behind her eyes. Jealousy. A week later, everything exploded. It started on a Thursday evening. I was upstairs working on code when Dad's voice thundered through the house. "Charlotte! Get downstairs. Now." My entire body tensed. The tone alone told me something was terribly wrong. When I entered the living room, Ava was crying on the couch. Mom sat beside her with an arm around her shoulders. Dad stood near the fireplace, his face red with anger. A printed stack of papers lay on the coffee table. "What happened?" I asked. Nobody answered immediately. Then Dad picked up the papers and threw them toward me. The pages scattered across the floor. My heart stopped. Screenshots. Social media messages. Dozens of them. Messages sent from an account using my name and profile picture. Cruel messages. Humiliating messages. Messages attacking Ava. Messages insulting Chloe. Messages accusing both girls of cheating and lying. I stared at them in disbelief. "I didn't write these." "Stop lying," Dad shouted. "I'm serious. I've never seen these before." Ava buried her face in Mom's shoulder and sobbed harder. "Why do you hate me?" she cried. "I don't hate you." "Then why would you do this?" "I didn't." Nobody listened. Nobody even tried. Mom looked at me with disappointment. Dad looked at me with disgust. And then came the second blow. Dad opened a drawer and pulled out a bundle of cash. $500. Money that had disappeared from the family safe 2 days earlier. "We found this hidden in your room." I felt the blood drain from my face. "What?" "It was under your mattress." "I've never seen that money before." Dad's jaw tightened. "You expect us to believe that?" "It's the truth." Ava suddenly lifted her sleeve. A dark bruise covered her forearm. Mom gasped. Dad looked horrified. My stomach dropped. "No. No. She couldn't possibly." "She grabbed me," Ava whispered through tears. The room spun. I had never touched her. Not once. She's lying. The words escaped before I could stop them. Silence filled the room. Ava began crying even harder. Mom stared at me as if she no longer recognized me. Dad's expression hardened into something colder than anger. It looked like judgment. Final judgment. For years, every misunderstanding had ended with Ava being believed. Every accusation. Every lie. Every manipulation. But this time felt different. This time, I could see something dangerous growing in my father's eyes. Something that terrified me. For the first time in my life, I realized my sister wasn't simply seeking attention anymore. She was trying to destroy me. And the worst part was that she was succeeding. As Ava cried against Mom's shoulder, I noticed something no one else saw. For a fraction of a second, she looked up. Our eyes met. And beneath the tears, she smiled. The smile vanished so quickly that anyone else would have missed it. But I saw it. And in that moment, I knew the truth. Ava had planned everything. The fake messages. The stolen money. The bruise. Every piece fit together perfectly. The problem was that nobody believed me. Look at me, Dad said coldly. I forced myself to meet his eyes. What happened to you? The question hurt more than the accusations. Because he wasn't asking what happened. He had already decided I was guilty. I didn't do any of this. Mom shook her head. Charlotte, please stop. I am telling the truth. Then explain all the evidence. I can't explain something I didn't do. Ava continued crying. The sound filled the room like poison. Dad pointed toward the staircase. Go to your room. I stood there frozen. That's it? You are grounded until further notice. Dad, enough. His voice hit like a slammed door. For the first time in my life, I realized something devastating. My parents didn't want the truth. They wanted a version of events that protected Ava. And no matter what I said, I would never win against that. I spent the next 3 days locked inside my room. My laptop was confiscated. My phone disappeared. Even preparations for the state youth technology competition were taken away. The project I had spent years building sat unfinished. Every hour felt heavier than the last. Outside my bedroom window, another winter storm was moving toward the city. Inside the house, the atmosphere was even colder. Nobody spoke to me unless necessary. Mom avoided eye contact. Dad treated me like a stranger. Only Ava seemed happy. Every time she passed my room, I could feel her satisfaction. As if watching my life fall apart was entertaining. Then came Friday night. The storm arrived earlier than expected. Snow slammed against the windows. Wind howled through the darkness. Weather alerts flashed across television screens throughout the city. At dinner, nobody spoke. The silence felt unnatural. Dangerous. Afterward, I returned to my room. Around 8 o'clock, I heard crying downstairs. My stomach tightened immediately. Ava. Again. A few seconds later, Dad shouted my name. The sound echoed through the house. I walked downstairs slowly. Every step felt heavier than the last. When I entered the living room, the scene looked painfully familiar. Ava sat crying beside Mom. Dad stood near the fireplace. But this time, his face looked different. Not angry. Furious. What now? I asked quietly. Dad held up a tablet. I just received an email from your school. Confusion washed over me. What email? The principal received anonymous reports. My pulse quickened. What reports? Dad's eyes burned with disappointment. They say you've been spreading rumors about students online. My heart nearly stopped. No. They have screenshots. No. They have witnesses. No. My voice cracked. Because suddenly I understood. Ava wasn't finished. She had been building this for weeks. Maybe months. Every lie had been leading here. Please, I whispered. You have to listen to me. Mom looked exhausted. Dad looked disgusted. Ava looked terrified. At least she pretended to. Then she spoke. I tried to protect you. I stared at her. What? Her voice trembled. I told them not to report you. The performance was flawless. A professional actress could not have done better. Dad stepped forward. I can't do this anymore. The room went silent. Even the storm outside seemed to disappear. What do you mean? I asked. His jaw tightened. You need help. My chest tightened. No, I need someone to believe me. You've become toxic. Tears filled my eyes. Dad, enough. The single word echoed through the room. Mom began crying softly. But she still said nothing. She still chose nothing. And that hurt the most. I looked at her one last time. Begging silently. Please. Just once. Choose me. But she lowered her eyes. The answer was clear. Dad pointed toward the front door. You need to leave. The world stopped. For a moment, I honestly thought I had misheard him. Outside, the snowstorm raged through the night. Inside, my family sat in silence. And suddenly I understood something horrifying. Nobody was going to save me. Not this time. Not ever. As I stared at the front door, my hands trembling, I had no idea that before sunrise, I would be fighting for my life. And I certainly had no idea that a complete stranger was about to become the only family I would ever truly have. 13 years passed. Some wounds faded. Others simply learned how to hide. The night of the storm changed everything. Victoria Hale had not only saved my life. She had saved my future. When the authorities investigated what had happened, the truth began surfacing piece by piece. Digital forensic experts discovered inconsistencies in the fake accounts used to attack me. Financial records exposed timelines that never matched my parents' accusations. Slowly, the story my family had believed started falling apart. But by then, I was already building a new life. Victoria never tried to replace my parents. Instead, she did something far more powerful. She believed me. For the first time, someone listened when I spoke. For the first time, someone looked at my achievements before looking at my mistakes. Under her guidance, I flourished. I graduated at the top of my high school class. I earned a full scholarship to one of the nation's leading universities. While other students spent weekends partying, I spent mine building software, attending technology conferences, and refining the educational platform I had started as a teenager. Every challenge became fuel. Every painful memory became motivation. I was no longer trying to prove my worth to my family. I was proving it to myself. By the age of 24, I launched Lumina Learning, an artificial intelligence platform designed to help struggling students receive personalized academic support. The idea was simple. No child should fall behind simply because nobody believed in them. The platform grew faster than anyone expected. Schools adopted it. Nonprofit organizations partnered with us. Investors began calling. Within 3 years, Lumina Learning was helping tens of thousands of students across the country. Newspapers called me an innovator. Television networks called me a rising leader. But every time someone praised my success, I remembered the frightened girl standing in a snowstorm with nowhere to go. She was the reason I kept working. She was the reason I never gave up. At 28, I established the Winter Light Foundation. The organization provided scholarships, mentorship programs, and emergency support for teenagers abandoned by their families. Students wrote to us every day. Some had been thrown out of their homes. Some had escaped abusive situations. Some simply needed one person to believe in them. Their stories broke my heart. But they also reminded me why my work mattered. One evening, after a fundraising event in Chicago, Victoria and I sat overlooking the city skyline. The lights stretched endlessly across the darkness. "You've built something extraordinary," she said. I smiled. "You built it first." She shook her head. "No, Charlotte. I opened a door. You walked through it." For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then my phone buzzed. An email had arrived. I opened it casually. Within seconds, my breath caught. "What is it?" Victoria asked. I turned the screen toward her. The invitation came from the National Leadership Forum, one of the most prestigious televised events in the country. They wanted me to deliver the keynote address during their annual broadcast. Millions of viewers watched the program every year. My success story had been selected as the centerpiece of the event. Victoria's eyes widened. "This is huge." But my attention wasn't on the invitation. It was on a single line near the bottom. The broadcast would take place in Minneapolis, my hometown region. Less than 3 hours from where my family still lived. For a long moment, old memories flooded back. The accusations. The betrayal. The storm. The slammed door. Victoria watched me carefully. "You don't have to accept." I stared at the screen. Maybe she was right. Maybe walking away would be easier. Then I thought about the girl I used to be. The girl nobody defended. The girl nobody chose. Slowly, I closed the email and looked out across the city lights. "No," I said quietly. "This time, I'm not running." And somewhere far away, without realizing it, my parents were only weeks away from seeing the daughter they thought they had erased forever. The auditorium fell silent as my name echoed through the speakers. "Please welcome Charlotte Bennett." For a moment, all I could hear was my own heartbeat. Then the applause began. Hundreds of people stood and clapped as I walked toward the stage. Bright lights flooded the room. Television cameras tracked every step. Millions of viewers were watching from home. But my attention was fixed on one section of the audience. Row 7. 3 familiar faces. My father. My mother. And Ava. The moment their eyes met mine, everything changed. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. My father went completely still. Ava looked as if all the air had been sucked from her lungs. They recognized me. For 13 years, they had lived with the belief that I was gone forever. Now I stood under the spotlight they never imagined I would reach. I took a slow breath and stepped behind the podium. "Good evening," I began. The room immediately quieted. When people hear stories about success, they often focus on achievement. I paused. The awards. The businesses. The recognition. Across the audience, my father's face had turned pale. But the most important part of every success story is survival. The silence deepened. When I was 15 years old, I lost my home. My mother started crying. The audience exchanged confused glances. I was accused of things I never did. Ava lowered her head. I was judged before anyone listened. My voice remained calm. Steady. Strong. The people who should have protected me chose someone else's version of the truth. Tears filled my mother's eyes. My father stared at the floor. For the first time in my life, he looked small. I spent one winter night alone during a storm. The room became completely silent. I thought my life was over. Then I smiled. But sometimes the end of one story becomes the beginning of another. A camera shifted toward Victoria sitting near the front row. I looked directly at her. One person chose compassion when everyone else chose judgment. Victoria wiped tears from her eyes. One person believed me when nobody else would. The audience began applauding softly. She saved my life. I paused. And because she did, thousands of students have received opportunities they never thought possible. The applause grew louder. By the time I finished, nearly the entire auditorium was standing. The ovation lasted several minutes. But 3 people remained frozen in their seats. My family. After the broadcast ended, I slipped backstage. Part of me hoped they would leave. They didn't. A staff member approached nervously. "Charlotte, there's a family waiting to see you." I already knew. When I entered the private reception room, nobody spoke at first. The silence stretched between us. 13 years of silence. Finally, my father stepped forward. He looked older than I remembered. Smaller. Broken. Tears filled his eyes. "We were wrong." The words hung in the air. Simple. Painful. Far too late. My mother began sobbing. "We should have listened." I nodded slowly. "Yes. You should have." Neither of them argued. Neither of them denied it. Then Ava spoke. For the first time, there was no performance in her voice. No manipulation. No tears designed to gain sympathy. Only shame. "I did it." The room froze. My father looked at her. "What?" Ava closed her eyes. "The messages. The money. The bruise. The lies." My mother's knees nearly gave out. My father stared in disbelief. "I was jealous," Ava whispered. "Of her grades. Her talent. The attention she earned." Tears streamed down her face. "I never thought it would go that far." But it had. We all knew it. My father covered his face. My mother wept openly. And suddenly I realized something. For years, I had imagined this moment. The apology. The confession. The truth. I thought it would heal me. But standing there, I felt something unexpected. Peace. Not because they suffered. Not because they regretted what happened. But because their choices no longer controlled my life. I looked at Ava. "I forgive you." She burst into tears. Then I looked at my parents. "I forgive you too." Hope appeared in their eyes. For one brief second. Then I gently shook my head. But forgiveness doesn't erase consequences. Their expressions. Fell. We are not a family anymore. The truth hurt. But it was still the truth. Victoria stepped beside me and quietly took my hand. The woman who had chosen me when nobody else did. The woman who had become my real family. Together, we walked toward the exit. Neither of us looked back. Because some stories are not about revenge. They are about survival. They are about healing. And they are about discovering that your worth was never determined by the people who failed to see it. If Charlotte's journey touched your heart, share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Still Waters Payback for more powerful stories about resilience, justice, and second chances. And tell us this, if you had been in Charlotte's place, what would you have done?